holographic display flickered with impossible readings as Commander Zix stared at the data streaming from the surface of Kepler-4 to see. The toxic world below churned with acid storms and radiation that could kill most sentient species in minutes. Nothing was supposed to survive down there, Commander whispered Navigator Tala, her crystalline features reflecting the blue glow of the scanners. The human's life signs are still stable. It's been 3 standard hours since the crash. Zixith's tentacles curled in disbelief. 3 hours on a Class X death world. The longest any known species had survived on such a planet was 14 minutes. And that was a heavily augmented Corvin warrior in full environmental armor. "Show me visual," he commanded. The main screen shimmered, revealing a sight that defied everything they knew about galactic survival protocols. A lone human figure moved deliberately across the hellish landscape, dragging wreckage from the crashed research vessel. No environmental suit, no protective gear, just organic flesh and primitive clothing. "By the ancient void," breathed Chief Science Officer Nexara, her 6 eyes blinking in rapid succession. How is this possible? Below them, the human named Marcus Chen continued working, seemingly unaware that he was performing the impossible. The observation deck fell silent, except for the soft hum of life support systems and the steady beeping of scanners that refused to believe their own readings. "Record everything," Zixith ordered quietly. "The Galactic Council will never believe this without proof." Chapter 1. The crash 6 hours earlier, the research vessel. Harmony's Edge shuddered violently as it broke through Kepler-4 to seize volatile atmosphere. Warning alarms shrieked through the corridors as Dr. Marcus Chen braced himself against the laboratory bulkhead, watching his carefully organized soil samples scatter across the floor. "Hull breach in Section 7, shouted Captain Veltar over the intercom, his Rigelian accent thick with panic. "Qual crew to escape pods immediately." Marcus grabbed his emergency kit and stumbled through the tilting corridors. The ship groaned like a dying beast as gravitational forces tore at its superstructure. Through the viewing ports, he caught glimpses of the planet below, swirling nightmare of rust-colored storms and sulfuric clouds. He reached the escape pod bay just as another violent shake sent him sprawling. When he looked up, his heart sank. The pod bay doors were twisted and sealed shut. Emergency lighting cast everything in hellish red shadows. No, he muttered, frantically working the manual release. Nothing. The ship lurched again, and Marcus felt the sickening sensation of free fall. Through the porthole, he watched the alien landscape rushing up to meet them. This was it. This was how his story would end, not in a laboratory making groundbreaking discoveries, but splattered across an alien world that no human had ever seen. The impact came like a hammer blow from the gods. Marcus awoke to the taste of copper and the sound of hissing gas. Emergency lights flickered weakly in the crumpled remains of the research vessel. His head throbbed, and something warm trickled down his forehead. "Blood. Hello," called out, his voice echoing strangely in the twisted metal tomb. "Captain? Anyone?" Silence answered him, the kind of silence that spoke of death and emptiness. Marcus forced himself to his feet, taking inventory of his injuries. Cuts and bruises, but nothing broken. Lucky. Impossibly lucky. He picked his way through the wreckage, calling out for survivors. In the captain's quarters, he found Veltar pinned beneath a collapsed beam, his blue skin already growing cold. The navigator, Tron, had been crushed instantly when the ceiling collapsed. Marcus closed his eyes and whispered a prayer for the dead. Then he opened them and faced the reality of his situation. He was alone on an alien world that the ship's database had classified as incompatible with carbon-based life. The atmospheric composition readings scrolled through his memory. Sulfur dioxide, methane, trace amounts of hydrogen sulfide. The surface temperature hovered around 60 degrees Celsius. Radiation levels that should cook him from the inside out. Yet here he was, breathing and thinking and very much alive. The ship's hull had cracked open like an egg, revealing the alien landscape beyond. Marcus approached the breach cautiously, expecting to collapse the moment the planet's atmosphere touched his lungs. Instead, he took a breath and ... lived. The air was hot and thick, tasting of metal and sulfur, but it was breathable. His skin tingled with the radiation, but it didn't burn. It was like standing too close to a campfire, uncomfortable but not lethal. Impossible, he whispered, then said it louder. Impossible. But impossible or not, he was alive. And if he wanted to stay that way, he needed to start thinking like a survivor instead of a scientist. Marcus turned back to the wreckage, his mind already cataloging what he could salvage. Food supplies, water recyclers, basic tools. The ship's emergency beacon was destroyed, but that didn't matter. No rescue was coming to a world like this. He was on his own. Chapter 2. The Impossible Adaptation High Above the Planet's Surface. The galactic observation ship Infinite Wisdom maintained its silent vigil. The bridge crew watched in stunned fascination as the human emerged from the wreckage and began what could only be described as the most audacious survival attempt in recorded galactic history. "He's moving with purpose," observed Chief Science Officer Nexara, her crystalline fingers dancing over the sensor controls, collecting materials, sorting them by some unknown criteria. Commander Zix leaned forward in his command chair, his tentacles twitching with nervous energy. "What's his core temperature?" 37.2 degrees Celsius, within normal human parameters. Nexara's voice carried a note of wonder. "Commander, according to our atmospheric readings, he should be experiencing severe chemical burns. To his respiratory system, the sulfur dioxide concentration alone." "I know what the readings say," Zixt cut her off. "I also know what I'm seeing. Continue monitoring. I want detailed scans of his biological functions." On the surface, Marcus had sorted the salvageable materials into neat piles. Twisted hull plating, insulation, foam, emergency rations, water, a recycling unit that had somehow survived the crash intact. He'd even found a basic toolkit and what looked like the remains of the ship's fabrication unit. "Okay, Marcus," he said to himself, a habit he'd developed during long solo research missions. "First things first. Shelter. This radiation might not be killing you right now, but exposure is exposure." He surveyed the landscape with the eye of someone who'd spent years studying geological formations. The crash site sat in a valley between two ridges of what looked like volcanic rock. To the east, he could see the dark mouth of a cave system. "Too obvious," he muttered. "Caves usually mean something already lives there." Instead, he turned his attention to a cluster of large boulders about 50 meters from the wreck. They were arranged in a rough semicircle, providing natural windbreaks. The rocks themselves seemed to be some kind of crystalline formation. They glowed faintly with internal phosphorescence. As Marcus approached the boulder formation, Nexara's instruments went wild. "Commander," she called out urgently, "the human is approaching a cluster of beryllium crystals?" Every head on the bridge turned toward the main screen. Beryllium was one of the most dangerous substances known to galactic science. Crystalline formation that emitted lethal doses of exotic radiation. Even their ship's shielding couldn't protect them from prolonged exposure to large deposits. "He's walking right into a death field," whispered Navigator Tala. "Those crystals could kill a Corvin from 50 meters away." But Marcus didn't die. He walked among the glowing stones like they were ordinary rocks, running his hands over their surfaces, testing their stability. To the watching aliens, it looked like a child playing in a garden of atomic fire. "Incredible," he said, examining the largest crystal. It was warm to the touch and pulsed with a steady rhythm like a heartbeat. Some kind of piezoelectric effect? The regular pulsing suggests an internal energy source. He couldn't know that. Each pulse was releasing enough exotic radiation to sterilize a small city. All he knew was that the crystals were beautiful, stable, might be useful. Marcus spent the next hour carefully positioning hull plates between the crystals, creating a framework for what would become his shelter. He worked methodically, testing each joint and connection. The hull plates were made of a titanium steel alloy that should have been impossible to bend with bare hands. But somehow Marcus managed to shape them using leverage and persistence. How? "Is he manipulating titanium composite with primitive tools?" Nexara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "More importantly," added Tala, Why isn't the Xerillium affecting him? Commander Zik said nothing, but his mind was racing. In 300 years of space travel, he'd never seen anything like this. The human wasn't just surviving on a death world, he was thriving, working with materials that should be impossible to handle in an environment that should have killed him instantly. As the planet's primary star began to set, casting the landscape in shades of orange and red, Marcus had completed the basic framework of his shelter. 3 walls of salvaged hull plating anchored between the crystal formations and sealed with insulation foam. He'd even managed to create a crude door from a section of interior paneling. Day 1 complete, he said to himself as he surveyed his work. Not bad for a xenobiologist with no construction experience. But his day wasn't over yet. As the temperature began to drop with the setting sun, Marcus realized he faced a new challenge. The planet's rapid temperature swings meant that while the day was uncomfortably hot, the night would likely be freezing. He needed heat and light, and a way to filter the increasingly toxic air as atmospheric pressure shifted with the temperature. Marcus looked at the pulsing crystals around his shelter and had an idea that would have horrified any rational being in the galaxy. "Let's see if you beautiful things can do more than just glow," he murmured, approaching the largest crystal with a piece of copper wiring salvaged from the ship's electrical systems. What he was about to attempt was so dangerous that the Galactic Council had banned research into Xerillium energy extraction after it had destroyed an entire research station. The exotic radiation released during attempted energy harvesting had created a dead zone in space that was still expanding 3 centuries later. But Marcus Chen was just a human who needed warmth and light to survive the night. But he had no idea. He was about to attempt the impossible again. Dash, 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 hash, hash, Chapter 3. The energy harvests the moment. Marcus touched the copper wire to the Xerillium crystal. Every alarm on the infinite wisdom began screaming at once. "Massive energy spike," Nexara shouted over the cacophony. "He's tapping directly into the crystal matrix." "Impossible," Commander Zixith breathed, watching the human work with materials that had killed thousands of the galaxy's brightest scientists. The energy feedback alone should have vaporized him. On the surface, Marcus felt the crystal's vibration change the moment the copper made contact. The gentle pulsing became a steady hum, and the crystal's glow intensified.
Ow.
More importantly, he could feel warmth flowing through the improvised conductor. "That's it," he murmured, carefully wrapping the wire around a small piece of the ship's heating element. Within moments, the metal began to glow with a soft red heat. Marcus had just created the galaxy's first successful Xerillium energy tap, and he thought he'd simply made a primitive space heater high above. The observation ship's instruments recorded energy readings that defied every known law of physics. The human had somehow created a stable energy extraction field around the crystals, without triggering a cascading radiation event. "How?" Tala whispered.
Ow.
The quantum resonance alone should have created a feedback loop that would crack the planet's crust. "Look at his biological readings," Nexara said, her voice filled with awe. "His cellular structure is actually adapting to the exotic radiation. The energy isn't harming him, it's strengthening him." It was true. Marcus felt better then. He had since the crash. The chronic ache in his joints from years of laboratory work was fading. The cut on his forehead had stopped bleeding and was already beginning to heal. Even his vision seemed sharper in the alien twilight. As the night deepened, Marcus continued. Improving his shelter, he used the steady energy from the crystals to power a small fabrication unit he'd salvaged from the ship's workshop. The device wasn't designed to work with Xerillium energy, but somehow it accepted the exotic power source without complaint. "Just like riding a bike," Marcus muttered as he programmed the fabricator to create basic survival gear. "Except the bike is powered by impossible alien crystals on a planet that should have killed me hours ago." The fabricator hummed to life, its molecular assemblers creating tools and materials from the raw elements Marcus had fed into its storage compartment. Within an hour, he had a water filtration system, emergency rations, and even a crude communications device. Day 1, survival objectives met, he announced to the empty air. Shelter, check. Heat and light, check. Food and water, check. Long-term communications, work in progress. Unknown to Marcus, his improvised communications device was broadcasting on frequencies that no human technology should be able to access. The signal reached the infinite wisdom with crystal clarity. Commander Tala reported, her voice tight with disbelief. We're receiving a transmission from the surface. Human vocal patterns. He's actually trying to establish contact. Zixith S. Tentacles coiled around his command chair. Can he see us? Negative. A. The transmission appears to be a general distress call. But Commander, the signal strength suggests he's broadcasting with the power of a Class 5 stellar communications array, using equipment that should barely be able to reach orbit. Marcus, meanwhile, had moved on to his next project. The night air was becoming increasingly toxic as the planet's strange. Atmospheric cycles shifted poisonous gases up from the deep valleys. His improvised air filtration system was working, but barely. He needed something more sophisticated. Something that could not only filter toxins, but actively neutralize them. His eyes fell on a cluster of smaller crystals that had been glowing with a different frequency than the others. Where the large crystals pulsed with warm orange light, these smaller ones flickered with cool blue patterns. Different resonance frequency, Marcus mused. Approaching the blue crystals with scientific curiosity, overriding survival instinct, which might mean different properties. He touched one of the blue crystals with a strand of copper wire, just as he had with the orange ones. The result was immediate and dramatic. The air around the crystal shimmered, and Marcus felt a strange, tingling sensation as the atmospheric composition changed. The sulfurous smell faded, replaced by something closer to the recycled air of a space station. Atmospheric processing, he whispered in amazement. You're actually breaking down the toxic compounds and reassembling them into breathable atmosphere. The observation ship, the readings were beyond anything in their scientific databases. The Xerillium variants are responding to his touch, Nexara reported, her voice barely steady. They're restructuring local atmospheric composition in real time. The toxic gas concentrations are dropping to negligible levels within a 50-meter radius of his position. That's impossible, Commander Zixith said, for what felt like the 100th time that day. Xerillium doesn't respond to biological contact. It's inert to all known forms of organic manipulation. Tell that to the human, Tala muttered. By the time the planet's primary star began to rise, Marcus had transformed his crash site into something that looked more like a research outpost than a survival shelter. The Xerillium crystals provided unlimited clean energy and perfectly filtered atmosphere. The fabricator had produced everything from basic furniture to sophisticated scientific instruments. Most remarkable of all, Marcus himself seemed to be thriving. His injuries had healed completely overnight. His skin had developed a faint luminescence that matched the crystal's glow, and his eyes now reflected light with an intensity that suggested enhanced night vision. Day 2 begins, Marcus announced cheerfully, emerging from his shelter into the toxic dawn light that should have killed him instantly. Time to explore this fascinating little rock and see what other surprises it has in store. He had no idea that his fascinating little rock was considered one of the most dangerous worlds in the galaxy. Nor did he know that his survival was being watched by beings who were beginning to question everything they thought they knew about the nature of life itself. Marcus Chen, xenobiologist and accidental pioneer, began his morning routine on a death world as if it were just another day at the office. Above him, the crew of the Infinite Wisdom watched in respectful silence as the impossible human prepared to explore a planet that had claimed the lives of entire research expeditions. Commander, Nexara said quietly, should we attempt contact? Consider the question carefully. First contact protocols were clear, but no protocol covered a situation like this. How do you make contact with a being who was performing miracles with technology that shouldn't exist? Not yet, he decided. Let's see what else this human can do. Something tells me we've only seen the beginning. As if summoned by his words, an alarm chimed softly on the science station. Commander Tala reported, large life forms approaching. The human's position from the eastern ridge, they appear to be ... predatory. On the main screen, shapes moved through the sulfurous mist. Large shapes. Hungry shapes. Marcus was about to face his first real test on the Deathworld. He didn't even know they were coming. Chapter 4. The hunt Marcus was cataloging. The different crystal formations around his shelter when he heard it, a low, rumbling sound that seemed to come from the rocks themselves. He paused in his work, tilting his head to listen. The sound came again, closer this time. Not from the rocks. From something moving across them. Well, Marcus said to himself, grabbing a sturdy piece of salvaged metal that could serve as both tool and weapon. I was wondering when I'd meet the local wildlife. On the Infinite Wisdom, the bridge crew watched 3 massive shapes emerge from the sulfurous mist. The creatures were unlike anything in their xenobiological databases. 6-legged predators the size of hover tanks,
with crystalline growths
along their spines that glowed with the same eerie light as the Xerillium formations. Kepler's stalkers, breathed Nexara, identifying the creatures from forbidden research files. Native apex predators. They hunt in packs and are drawn to energy signatures. The human's crystal array, Tala realized with horror. It's acting. Like a dinner bell. Commander Zixith leaned forward, his tentacles gripping his chair. Show me close up. Biological scans of those creatures. The results appeared on a secondary screen, causing several crew members to step back in alarm. The stalkers weren't just large predators, they were living weapons. Their crystalline spines could discharge focused energy beams. Their claws were harder than diamond. Their hide was thick enough to stop heavy weapons fire, and they were moving directly toward the human, who had no idea what was coming. Marcus continued his scientific observations, noting how the different crystal formations seemed to pulse in response to each other. It was fascinating, like watching a slow conversation in light and energy. Then he saw the first set of glowing eyes in the mist. "Hello there," Marcus said calmly, recognizing predatory behavior when he saw it. "I don't suppose you're the friendly neighborhood welcome committee." The creature that emerged from the sulfurous fog was magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. It stood nearly 3 meters tall at the shoulder, with 6 powerful legs ending in claws that looked like they could carve through starship hull. Crystalline spines along its back cast prismatic light patterns across the rocky ground. Marcus felt his heart rate increase, but his mind remained clear. Years of field work on dangerous worlds had taught him that panic was usually more deadly than the actual predator. "Easy there, big guy," he said softly, keeping his improvised weapon low and non-threatening. "Just passing through your neighborhood. No need for anyone to get hurt." The stalker tilted its massive head, studying this strange small creature that smelled of energy and showed no fear. In its primitive but cunning mind, this was wrong. Small creatures should run, should scream, should provide the thrill of the hunt. This one just stood there. Talking to it, the creature's crystalline spines began to glow brighter, building up an energy charge that would reduce Marcus to ash in seconds. On the observation ship, warning. Alarms shrieked as sensors detected the imminent energy discharge. "He doesn't understand the danger," Tala whispered. "He's just standing there." But Marcus did understand. He'd seen bioluminescent threat displays before, and the brightening spines told a clear story. He also noticed something else. The way the creature's crystalline growths pulsed with the same rhythm as the Xerillium formations around his shelter. "Interesting," Marcus murmured, then did something that sent shockwaves through the observation. Ship's crew. He touched one of the nearby crystals, and through the energy connection he'd established, sent a pulse of harmonic frequency toward the approaching stalker. The effect was immediate and stunning. The creature's aggressive posture shifted to one of confusion. Spines dimmed as the energy charge dissipated harmlessly. For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, predator and human stared at each other across 10 meters of alien ground. Then the stalker did something unprecedented in its species' evolutionary history. It sat down. "Yes," well, Marcus said, his voice carrying a note of amazed delight that's new. The other 2 stalkers emerged from the mist, drawn by their pack leader's strange behavior. They approached cautiously, their own crystalline spines flickering with uncertain energy patterns. Marcus extended his harmonic pulse to include all three creatures, modulating the frequency to match their biological resonance. The results were even more dramatic. The stalker's aggressive posturing melted away, replaced by what could only be described as curiosity. On the infinite wisdom, the silence was absolute. Did he just... Tala began, establish harmonic communication with Classa? Apex predators using Xerillium resonance, Nexera finished. Yes, he did. Commander Zix found his voice after a long moment. In 300 years of galactic exploration, I have never seen anything like this. He's not just surviving on a death world, he's communicating with its most dangerous inhabitants. Marcus, unaware of the galactic significance of his actions, was conducting what he thought was simply good scientific method. He'd always believed that communication was possible with any sufficiently complex organism. Given the right approach, the largest stalker rose and approached slowly, its massive head lowering until it was level with Marcus's shoulders. This close, Marcus could see that its eyes held an intelligence that was both alien and unmistakably aware. "Hello," Marcus said softly, maintaining the harmonic pulse through the crystal network. "I'm Marcus. I'm sorry for dropping in unannounced." The stalker made a sound, part growl, part harmonic tone that resonated through the crystal formations like music. Marcus felt the meaning more than heard it. Curiosity, caution, and something that might have been amusement.
Orcs.
"You think I'm funny?" "Do you?" Marcus smiled. "Can't say I blame you. I probably look pretty ridiculous from your perspective." The creature made another sound, and this time Marcus was certain he detected amusement. The other two stalkers had settled into comfortable positions around his shelter, apparently content to observe this strange new addition to their territory. "Well," Marcus said, stepping back to give the creatures space, "since you're here, would you like to see what I've been working on?" What followed was perhaps the most unusual guided tour in galactic history. Marcus showed the stalkers his shelter, his energy collection system, and his atmospheric processing setup. The creatures listened with rapt attention, their crystalline spines pulsing in response to different energy signatures. When Marcus demonstrated the fabricator, creating a simple tool from raw materials, all three stalkers made sounds of what could only be described as applause. "Smart audience," Marcus commented. "Most university students aren't this engaged." As the day progressed, an extraordinary partnership began to develop. The stalkers, it turned out, were remarkably intelligent creatures with an intuitive understanding of the planet's crystal networks. They guided Marcus to deposits of different crystal varieties, each with unique properties and potential applications. In return, Marcus shared his water filtration technology and even managed to fabricate some kind of crystalline enhancement that made the creature's energy discharges more efficient. "Symbiosis," Marcus mused as he watched one of the stalkers test its improved energy beam by carving complex patterns in a boulder. Who would have thought? On the observation ship, the implications were staggering. He's established the first recorded symbiotic relationship with Kepler stalkers, Nexara reported. The predators are actively helping him explore and understand the planet's crystal systems. More than that, Tala added, studying the long-range scans, they're leading him toward something. Look at their movement patterns. Commander Zixith studied the tactical display. The stalkers were indeed guiding Marcus in a specific direction, toward a massive crystal formation that showed up on their scans as a concentrated energy source unlike anything they'd ever detected. "What's in that direction?"
Asked. Nexara
Worked her controls, enhancing the long-range sensors. When the results came back, she went very still. "Commander," she said quietly, "I'm reading a structure. Artificial construction, and it's massive." The revelation sent a chill through the bridge crew. An artificial structure on a death world that was supposed to be uninhabited. A structure that the local apex predators were guiding alone. Human to discover. "How massive?" Zix asked. "Continental scale," Nexara whispered. "Commander, this isn't just a structure. It's a city. A dead city the size of a small continent, built around the largest Xerillium formation in the galaxy." On the surface, Marcus was chatting with his new companions, completely unaware that he was being led toward one of the greatest archaeological discoveries in galactic history. The stalkers moved with purpose now, their earlier curiosity replaced by what seemed almost like urgency. "Where are we going, friends?" Marcus asked. But the creatures just made encouraging sounds and continued leading him through increasingly spectacular crystal formations. As the planet's primary star reached its zenith, they crested a ridge that had blocked Marcus's view of the eastern landscape. What he saw on the other side stopped him in his tracks. Stretching to the horizon was a city of impossible scale and beauty. Spires of living crystal reached toward the sky like frozen music, connected by bridges of pure energy that pulsed with rainbow light. At the city's heart, a Xerillium formation, the size of a mountain, cast aurora patterns across the sky. "By all the gods of Earth," Marcus breathed. The largest stalker made a sound that somehow conveyed pride, welcome, and ancient sadness all at once. Marcus understood this wasn't just a city. It was a tomb, a monument to something magnificent that had been lost to time. And somehow, the stalkers wanted him to find it. "All right," Marcus said, shouldering his pack and checking his equipment. "Let's go explore a dead alien city. What's the worst that could happen?" On the observation ship, Commander Zixth was asking himself the exact same question. ### epilogue. The discovery 3 days later, the Infinite Wisdom hung in orbit above Kepler for 4 to see, its crew struggling to process what they had witnessed. In 72 hours, everything they thought they knew about the galaxy had been turned upside down by one impossible human. "Final report, Science Officer Commander Zixith," requested, his voice heavy with exhaustion and wonder. Nexara consulted her datapad, though she hardly needed to. Every detail was burned into her memory. "The human Marcus Chen has successfully established a permanent settlement on the surface. He has domesticated 3 Kepler stalkers, created a stable energy grid using 17 different varieties of Xerillium crystal, and activated approximately 12% of the ancient city's infrastructure." "Activated?" Tala asked. "The city's been dead for millennia." "Not anymore," Nexara replied grimly. "The city appears to have been designed to respond to specific biological signatures. Signatures that match human genetics with remarkable precision." The implications hung in the air like a toxic cloud. A dead alien city, built around impossible technology, somehow recognized and responded to human DNA? It suggested connections across space and time that challenged every assumption about galactic history. "What's he doing now?" Zixith asked. The main screen showed Marcus in what appeared to be a vast library within the city's central spire. Holographic displays surrounded him, showing star charts and technical diagrams that hurt to look at directly. The 3 stalkers lounged nearby like enormous, deadly cats. "Learning," Nexara said simply. "The city's database appears to be teaching him language, history, technology. He's been at it for 36 hours straight, and his biological readings continuing to evolve. His cellular structure is adapting to process exotic radiation more efficiently. His neural activity has increased by 40%. He's changing, Commander, becoming something more than baseline human." Marcus chose that moment to look up from his studies, stretching muscles that no longer ached despite hours of constant work. The city's knowledge flowed through him like water, each new revelation more astounding than the last. The beings who had built this place called themselves the Architects. They had seeded the galaxy with life billions of years ago, guiding evolution on countless worlds toward a specific goal. They had been waiting for a species that could bond with Xerillium crystals, that could interface directly with the energy networks that connected star systems across the galaxy. They had been waiting for humans, Marcus said to his stalker. "Companions, this certainly explains a few things." The largest stalker made an amused rumble. Over the past few days, Marcus had learned to interpret their vocalizations with increasing accuracy. This one roughly translated to, "You have no idea." Marcus laughed. "You're right. I probably don't, but I'm beginning to get the picture." He stood and walked to one of the massive windows that looked out over the awakening city. Spires that had been dark for eons now pulsed with gentle light. Gardens that had been crystalline dust were slowly regenerating, fed by the energy networks Marcus had unknowingly activated. The architects didn't die, Marcus said aloud, working through the implications. They transcended, became part of the crystal network itself. They'd been waiting for someone who could join them. The stalker beside him made a sound of agreement. Tinged with anticipation, Marcus turned back to the holographic displays, where new information was constantly updating. Star charts showing the locations of other architect cities. Technical specifications for technologies that could reshape civilizations. The complete history of galactic evolution laid out like a roadmap to the future. I should be terrified, Marcus mused, to be overwhelmed by the responsibility of all this. But instead, he felt excited, energized, ready to explore mysteries that spanned galaxies and eons. On the infinite wisdom, Commander Zixth made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. Open a communication channel to the surface. He ordered, Commander? Tala asked in surprise. The human has made contact with something far beyond our understanding. If we're going to face whatever comes next, we need to establish formal relations. The channel opened and Marcus's voice filled the bridge, clear and strong despite the impossible distance. Infinite Wisdom, this is Marcus Chen. I've been wondering when you'd introduce yourselves. Your ship design is beautiful, by the way. Rigelian construction with Centauri modifications? The bridge crew exchanged amazed looks. He'd not only detected their presence, but identified their ship's specifications. Dr. Chen Zixith replied carefully. This is Commander Zixith of the Galactic Observation Course. We've been monitoring your survival efforts. Marcus's laughter carried warmth and genuine amusement. Survival efforts? Commander, I haven't been surviving. I've been discovering. What I've found is going to change everything. What do you mean? Marcus said, his voice taking on the tone of someone sharing wonderful news. That humanity isn't alone in the galaxy. We never were. We're part of something magnificent. Something that's been growing and learning for billions of years. And now it's time for the next phase. Through the city's crystal networks, Marcus could sense other architect sites across the galaxy beginning to stir. Ancient technologies responding to the presence of the species they'd been designed to serve. The galaxy was about to wake up from a long sleep. Commander Marcus continued, I'd like to formally invite you and your crew to join me on the surface. There's so much to show you, so much to learn. And honestly, I could use some help figuring out how to explain all this to the Galactic Council. Commander Zixith looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew, fear and wonder ward in there. Expressions, but beneath it all, he saw the same thing he felt himself, curiosity, the need to understand, the courage to step into the unknown. Dr. Chen, he said formally, the crew of the Infinite Wisdom would be honored to accept your invitation. Excellent. Marcus's enthusiasm was infectious. Fair warning, though. Once you see what's down here, your perspective on the universe is going to change dramatically. I think Commander Zixith replied with what might have been the first genuine smile he'd worn in decades. That change might be exactly what the galaxy needs. As the Infinite Wisdom began its descent toward the impossible city on the death world below, Marcus Chen stood among the crystal spires with his unlikely companions, ready to welcome the first official visitors to humanity's new role in the cosmic order. The stalkers around him made sounds of anticipation, their crystalline spines pulsing with patterns that Marcus now recognized as excitement. They had been guardians of this place for millennia, waiting for the moment when the architect's plan would finally begin to unfold. Well, friends, Marcus said, watching the alien ship approach through the aurora-painted sky, I think we're about to make some new friends. Something tells me this is just the beginning. High above, the ancient crystal networks that connected star systems across the galaxy began to pulse with new energy, carrying the signal that would change everything. The architect's children had finally come home. The age of isolation was over. The age of discovery had begun, and it had all started with one human who refused to die on a world that should have killed him, who saw wonder where others saw only death. and who proved that sometimes the most impossible things are simply waiting. For someone brave enough to believe in them, Marcus Chen had survived the unsurvivable, befriended the unbefriendable, and discovered the undiscoverable. But his greatest adventure was just beginning.